All right, everybody, welcome once again to a special bonus episode here at the Red Delta Project podcast. I am joined today by my good friend and fellow coach, PCC mentor, Al Kavadlo. Al has just put out a brand new book, Perfecting the Pistol Squat, everything you ever wanted to know about one-legged squats. And we're going to be talking about his new book. We're going to be talking about upping your calisthenics leg game, adding firepower into your legs. And I'm super excited about this because I just got my hands on the book. I looked through it. This thing is so needed in our fitness industry because usually when it comes to the depth that's required to really start to understand the pistol squat, most of the stuff out there doesn't even come close to scratching the surface because it is a uh, very in-depth kind of move. There's a lot to learn about it. And usually when you hear about pistol squats, it's like a couple pages at best in a calisthenics book, which is enough to dip your toe in the water. But this is something that is so sorely needed. And I love this book. So Al, welcome to the RDP podcast. Tell me, why did you start on this book? Why the pistol squat?
Thanks for the kind introduction. I'm glad you liked it. And I think, in the past, we've talked about this with other things that I've done and things that you've done. It's a combination of feeling like you have a lot to say on the subject that hasn't been said and feeling like people want that information. So like you said, there's a lot of short tutorials online about pistol squats, things that are a few pages long, maybe a video. I have some of them myself. That's a few minutes long. But this is a full book, really breaking it down to a depth that I don't believe anyone else has ever done. And I feel as though who better than me to do it? I've done the exercise so many times. I've refined it myself for so long. I've taught it to so many people. I've shared it with so many coaches. And I have so many tips that when I sat down to write this thing, I was really just kind of blown away by, man, there really is so much to say about it. And I think I covered just about everything, although I'm sure eventually someone's going to hit me with a question that isn't in the book. And that's the beauty of this stuff is there's a never ending amount of things you could say about
And
everything.
I'm glad you wrote this book too, because if anybody's got an admirable pistol squat, it's you. Like, you've got many images and videos online about it and stuff. But the thing is, pistol squats, I find in the calisthenics world, are similar to like the one arm push up, where there's a lot of people out there who are like, look at my pistol squat. And they get down and they're like, yeah, it's okay, and it looks like it's a struggle. You have a pistol squat proficiency that exudes strength and confidence and balance and real honest mastery over this move. And while a lot of people claim they can do a pistol squat, very few people, I think, have the mastery that you have. And that's really where a lot of the benefits of this exercise come from, because when you get to the point where I can do it, that's like the white belt in martial arts hitting the bag with kind of floppy punches, going like, I can do it. I'm like, yeah, but the real fruit of the labor doesn't come from doing it. It comes from really getting good at it. And that's what I think you exemplify in your practice, but also in this book, because you would touch on so many things that no one ever talks about. Talk about some of the things that you included in this book, why you included them to make this much more of a complete manual.
Well, thank you very much. That's a really, really nice compliment. And that's part of why I feel like this is a book that I was meant to write. There's a lot of people in the calisthenics world who do other things better than I do them. But it's very, very seldom I see someone who I feel their pistol squat is completely on point. And I wanted to change that. I want more people to be able to do them better. And it's something I've really refined myself. And it's also something, as a coach, when you teach something, people ask you questions and they bring up aspects of an exercise that maybe you didn't consider, either because you were taking it for granted or because you just didn't really think of it. And then they ask a question, you're like, oh, I learned something too. And that's happened to me so many times over the years teaching this to other people. And of course, certain questions come up again and again. but it was really just the cumulative, information that I've amassed over a really long time of doing the move and teaching it to others.
Very good. Now, let's say I'm a total beginner to calisthenics and I want to get stronger, and I'm a little skeptical about body weight training for the legs. I mean, sure, pull-ups, dips, that's badass. Sure, even bodybuilders do that sort of thing. But when it comes to building a good set of wheels, we look at a lot of the heavier stuff as the bread and butter, but the bodyweight stuff is typically thought of as like introductory stuff or beginner level stuff, if that. What would you say to that attitude that you can't do much with body weight beyond the most fundamental ability to use your lower body?
Well, something I talk about in the beginning of the book is how I came to be fascinated by the pistol squat, because I came from more of a weight training background. In my teens and my early 20s, that was my main thing. And I saw somebody do a pistol squat, and I did exactly what you just alluded to. I underestimated that. I said, oh, that's just a body weight exercise. I'm going to be able to do this. And I couldn't. And it really threw me for a loop. And it challenged me much more than I thought it would. And it fascinated me. And it really sowed the seeds for a whole turning point in my training, where that was the beginning of me getting away from doing weights and getting more interested in doing body weight. So really all I would say to someone, and they're probably not this far into the podcast if they feel this way, but what I would say to someone who was dubious about the idea of using only your own body weight to train your legs is to try it for a little while and see how it goes. And if it's not for you, I've always been of the belief that I don't want to be negative about other styles of training. I want to promote what I love, which is calisthenics. But if people prefer doing weights, God bless. Get two legs, get under a barbell and squat it. That's going to get you strong too. But this book is specifically for people who really want to delve into the pistol squat. And I think there's a good amount of people out there who are interested in the subject.
Absolutely. And I had the same sort of experience myself. I was like, oh, shit, the body weight is it's nothing. It's going to be easy. I can do squats on two legs. So therefore one leg should be twice as hard as far as resistance level goes. And yeah, a total fallback on my butt and not even close. And the thing that really resonated with me was when I got into bodyweight training, I figured at best I would be able to maintain whatever I had from years of leg presses and things like that. And much to my surprise, the bodyweight leg training was the stuff that had by far the bigger impact on my body. As far as functional abilities, my leg size, my leg ability and everything was so much more with the bodyweight stuff than it ever was with the weights. And I think a big part of that is because the pistol squat is so much more than just a strength exercise. And I think that's the big mistake that we often make with this, is thinking it's purely a strength move, can't be that much resistance, therefore not adequate for strength. But it's really much more than just strength. It's mobility, it's stability, it's coordination, it's total body control. And I love how your book actually finally addresses these components, because if you don't have those components, you're not going to have a pistol squat. And that's one of the reasons why the pistol can be so effective, is it forces you to finally address these other issues, which your book does. Now, if, say, for example, I'm starting to get into pistol squats, what are some of the other components to the pistol squat that I need to be looking out for?
Well, you really just I think rattled them off pretty quickly. But I think the thing that surprises people in the beginning, if they are strong and they are good in other modalities with their legs, is the balance and the flexibility. Because I think people take that for granted, and when they actually try it, they're not used to doing it. You know the specificity principle, right? You get good at the things that you get good at. And people haven't tried the pistol, and they underestimate just how unique and specific and challenging of an exercise it is. Because here's the thing, you know this about all the calisthenics moves, and this is true in weights too. When somebody does something well, they make it look easy. And if you see people doing pistol squats and they're good at them, you might think it's easy.
Yeah, you make it look easy for sure. You've got images that inspired me to start getting into the pistol squat, where there's one in particular where you're on, it looks like a seawall, and you're looking out, and you've got a hat on, and you look like you're just hanging out in your pistol squat, like you're just chillaxing in the bottom there. And I saw that, I was like, that I want, that kind of control and ability I want. So if someone's getting into the pistol squat, what kind of journey are they looking at to get to that point?
Well, it really depends on where they're starting from. And that's part of why I put this book together the way that I did, is because it starts at the very beginning by just going over everything you need to do for a proper two-legged bodyweight squat, because I don't want to assume anything about my reader. And obviously, some people can get past that step relatively quickly. But wherever you're at, when you find the progression that does challenge you, you begin there, and then your journey is going to take however long it's going to take from that point.
Yeah. I always had that attitude of it's going to take whatever it's going to take. It could take 6 weeks, it could take 6 years, depending on what comes up and what kind of challenges you need to address. Um,
Yeah. I
now,
think it's good to go into something with some hopeful, optimistic expectation that you'll get it in a reasonable timeline, but you can't get too attached to that either, because we're not always as good at predicting the future as we'd like to think. So
yeah,
we just got to stay on track when we get derailed. Keep
that's
working on it.
so let's talk about that. Let's say I'm getting frustrated with my leg training and I feel like I'm kind of stalled and I'm just every squat is a bit of a struggle. And I'm like, I don't know about this sort of thing. If I came to you and I've got some experience under my belt, but I feel like I'm stuck, what would you recommend to get unstuck and keep moving forward?
Well, trying something different, I guess. If you'd been doing barbell training for years and years and you felt stuck, I would recommend you try some of the stuff in my new book.
Mhm.
And, conversely, if you're doing calisthenics for a long time and you feel like you stop progressing and you want to switch it up and do weights for a little while, I don't think that would be a bad thing. Getting stronger makes you stronger at everything. Even though there is specificity to things too, both of those things can coexist. There's the specificity factor, but there's also just the general, you get stronger in weights and you're going to be a stronger person. You get stronger in calisthenics, you're going to be a stronger person. And the more disciplines that you're strong in, the stronger you're going to be across the board.
Yep. The strength doesn't discriminate, as Zach Evanish has always said. Like if you just get stronger, that just impacts everything on an upper level. It's not like, oh, I got strong in this, but I can't possibly be stronger in anything else. It's a ripple effect across many different disciplines. And so being able to be well versed in multiple disciplines only makes you a more solid foundation for that.
Yeah, this stuff is nuanced.
Yeah, a lot of it there for sure. And one of the things that you touched on in your book, which I was really happy to see, which was a big stumbling block for me, and I've noticed this a lot in clients too, is that when it comes to developing good lower body strength, it's not so much just the raw muscular contractile force that we struggle with, but more of the mobility issues, particularly in the ankle and in the hips that hold a lot of people back. And that's certainly what held me back. So some of the tips you put in here are how to work on some of those mobility techniques. So let's start with the ankle. Let's say I got really stiff, tight ankles. That's going to impede your pistol squat in quite a way, isn't it?
For sure. Yeah, that's, you had asked me a few minutes ago what aspects of the move people might be surprised by. And that often throws people off, is they don't even realize how tight their ankle is until they try to get down and they can't flex deep enough to get into the bottom position. And, a lot of the time it's going to be one of those things that the older you are and the longer you've been tight for, the longer it can take to undo that. But, I always tell people, like, look, you can continue down the path you're on and you're just going to get tighter and tighter and tighter, or we can start undoing it. And, it's going to take however long it's going to take, but at least now you're moving the train in the right direction.
Hmm. Yeah, as a friend of mine once told me he was studying to be a doctor, and I said, "Well, that's going to take a long time to become a doctor. You got your med school, and then you got residencies." And he's like, "Yeah, but the time's going to pass anyway.
Right? He can
I
look back one
can be
day and be a doctor or
45."
not.
Yeah, and so I could be a doctor at 45 or whatever else at 45. So the time's going to pass anyway. So we shouldn't get discouraged with the idea of, oh, it's going to take a while to make this happen. It's like, well, you're either going to pass the time and get it or not. And at that point, I find it's a pretty obvious answer of what you should be doing, for sure.
You know, the paradox of that is the younger you are, the more impatient you are. So when you finally get old and wise enough to realize that, well, you've wasted a lot of good years already. Hopefully not too many. But no, you're 100% right. It's hilarious to me. I feel like I get messages from people saying, "Hey, am I too old to start training now?" And those people are anywhere between like 17 and 70. And everyone has that doubt, regardless of their age, because no matter how old you are, you're always the oldest you've ever been, even if you're young. So you feel old. I find myself feeling old sometimes. And then I remind myself, well, this is the oldest I've ever been, but this is also the youngest I'm ever going to be. So I'm going to look back on me now in 5 or 10 or 20 years and be like, oh, I was so young back then.
Mhm. Oh, it's also helpful to remember that the body never loses its adaptive qualities. We never reach a point where the body's like, nope, not going to adapt anymore, not going to get any stronger, never going to change or respond to my environment in any way, shape, or form from here on out. It's like we're always adapting. It's a constant process that's going on. So when we do these training exercises, we're just taking that process and directing it. You don't make anything happen when you squat. You're taking the same process that's been conditioning your legs since the day you were born, and now you're just directing it so you go in the direction of development you want to go versus taking your hands off the wheel and saying, wherever I end up, whatever, I don't really care. And so I think squatting in particular is one of the most important things we can possibly do, because I don't know of anything else I've done in my training that has led to a higher quality of performance, health, and even just quality of life than just getting really proficient at the squatting movement pattern. Because the more I get good at that, the better my entire body feels in everything that I do. And I know a lot of times we get focused on the upper body and the mirror muscles and stuff, but boy, there is nothing like improving the lower body for general health, well-being, and quality of life. Has that been kind of your experience as well?
Yeah. Yeah. I was just nodding along with everything that you're saying there. I mean, the great thing is you don't have to pick just one exercise.
Yeah.
So you can work your upper body, you can work your legs. But right, in theory, if I could only pick one exercise to do for the rest of my life, the pistol squat would be a really, really good choice. It would be hard for me to go with anything other than that.
Yeah. And I also want to really iterate too, like, so oftentimes in calisthenics, it's weird how the mind gets fixated on certain exercises, where the mind sometimes will get stuck on a pistol squat and think, well, that's where the benefit is. And you've got a lot of very smart progressions in this book, but I want people to understand there's a lot of benefit from doing any of those squatting movements. It's not like, oh, you're only going to be capable and strong and healthy once you reach the pistol squat. Like
I'm
improving
so
your
glad that you brought this up. And this is
yeah.
something that I think I mentioned a couple times in the book, but hearing you say it is making me feel like I should have driven this point home even harder than I did. But yeah, use those earlier progressions, even if you never reach a full pistol squat. Those earlier progressions can still help you get strong and help you move better and help you feel better.
Hmm. Yeah, because improving your squat is improving your squat. And it's the improvement that brings you benefits, not a, getting to some sort of a finish line that you line in the sand.
Well, to your point earlier about, kind of steering your health in a certain direction, I feel like people often have an all or nothing attitude with this stuff. It's like, oh, if I don't get to this very elite level, I haven't reached what my goal is and I'm disappointed. But it's like, really, if we're not professional athletes, if this isn't our livelihood, we're doing it for enjoyment, we're doing it for health, we're doing it for wellness. If it's keeping us healthy, if it's keeping us fit, if we're enjoying the process, it's like, who cares how far you get in the game or whatever? Like, you're certainly further ahead than you would be if you weren't working out at all. So to people who feel like, I'm not good enough, it's like, just keep going, and eventually you'll get better if you embrace the process.
Yeah, and there's benefits at every level. It's not like you only get benefits at the top level either. It's like if
Yeah.
someone is struggling to pay the bills and living paycheck to paycheck, it's like, well, why bother trying to bring in some more income if I'm not going to be a multi-millionaire? I'm like, yeah, but
It's a great
a
analogy.
little extra is going to really help you out, because better is better. It doesn't matter if you're the best in the world or just 1% better than where you are now. Better is better. And that's essentially what we're looking at with these exercises and lower body training in general. Is you improve your ability to use your lower body, you're going to look, feel, and perform better, even if it's just by 1%. I've had times when that 1% has been a life changer for me, because I used to have the huge chronic knee issues ever since I was 13 years old. And just improving a little tiny bit of mobility in my right hip made that disappear. And so it wasn't a big thing that you would get a lot of likes on social media or anything. But for me, it was massive, because now I can go upstairs without knee pain. And it just feels so incredibly good to improve. And even if it's not a huge improvement, just the improvement in itself is the huge reward. And that's what I think you really hit on with this book, is the roadmap that guides you to wherever you're at to improve either in a little or a lot, but it's going to be well worth it regardless of the degree of where you're starting or how much you improve on any timeline.
I love all of that, especially the analogy about, finances, right? If a perfect pistol squat is like being a calisthenics millionaire, it's not bad to have 500,000, even if you never get to the full pistol. You know what I mean? If you have to hold your toe or hold on to a ring or whatever for little assistance, there's
Mhm.
still a ton of benefits.
There's lots of benefits. So the other question and things that the attitude that comes up with pistol squats is sometimes we're like, oh, I can never get there. What's the point if I can't get there? But other people will say, okay, even if I can get there, like, is that seems like, and of course, this is always the sign that they've never done one, because they're like, it seems like a limited level of proficiency. Where do I go beyond that? And where do I continue to grow? Like, is the pistol squat the end of the road, or is there more beyond it?
Well, you already know because you looked at the book, but yeah, there's a whole section on advanced progressions beyond the pistol that I think will challenge people in a myriad of different ways. And that's part of what's cool about this too. Like we were talking about earlier, there's all these different aspects of it that can be challenging. So there might be one variation that has more of a balance component. There might be another variation that has more of a strength component, and another one that puts more emphasis on the mobility. So it's cool to observe different people and how they perceive the difficulty level of different things. And this is
Mm.
something I talk about in the book too, just the individual experience. And one person might find that this advanced variation is the hardest for them, and someone else might have a completely different experience with that based on their individual strengths, weaknesses, and previous, history.
And that's the other thing that I really like about this book, because it gives a lot of tools. It gives a lot of options and flexibility, where a lot of times when it comes to calisthenics programs and books and stuff, it's like, this is step one, then step two, then step three. Like, there's only one path you're supposed to take to
Yeah.
one destination. But your tools and your abilities that you give the reader is use the path that works best for you, given your current circumstances and abilities, And there's many paths up the mountain, but they all lead to the top. And so that's one of the reasons why I like this book, is because you give them tools, then they can create their own path to make their own progress in their own way, versus trying to shoehorn into a dogmatic system that's probably not going to work for 90% of the people, even if it is a pretty good program.
You hit the nail on the head, my friend. I mean, that's essentially why I decided to get into fitness writing in the first place. I was a successful personal trainer for a long time, and everything I would see was exactly that, just a cookie cutter program that didn't take individuality into account and didn't even acknowledge that people might not have the exact experience that they're detailing step by step. And I felt compelled to say to people, hey man, we're all different. And I'm going to try to, like you said, give you some tools and give you the keys to open up the lock for yourself, rather than just saying, go down this path.
Mhm.
And it's been a long time that I've been doing this. And sometimes I forget, because I've been doing it for so long now. And I feel like there are more people in fitness who are saying the same kind of message, like yourself as well. And it's nice to be reminded how that is actually kind of still unusual overall, to even tell people that there's more than one path.
One of the things that I've noted a lot, this multiple path or multi-tool approach too, that's so important, but especially with leg training, is that people oftentimes forget that workouts are supposed to be fun. We're supposed to enjoy this process. And especially with leg training, there's the jokes of skipping leg day and everything, and people don't adhere to it, not because it's hard, because hard can be very fun, but because people don't make leg training fun. They don't know how to make it fun, make it playful, make it something that they can
Make it
experiment.
interesting.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the reasons why I like these types of approaches, where you've got multiple tools, different techniques to employ mobility or stability or strength. You can play with it. Now we've got toys that we can play with our leg training, that make it fun and exploratory, and it takes the drudgery out of leg training, versus, all right, got to get on 300 pounds on the leg press, 3 sets of 10. All right. And you're scrolling through Instagram because you're not engaged at all during the sets and everything. And these, you've got to be present and engage. And it's now fun. And it brings leg training out of the dark ages of the drudgery. And so that makes it all the more rewarding, even in the actual process of the workout itself.
You asked me at the beginning of this conversation, part of what compelled me to want to write this book. And I think anytime you create something, and maybe you can speak to this as well, because you've written a lot of things, and I know you've got a new book also. When you create something, you have to really be interested in it, and you have to really be curious about the subject matter, because it is a lot of work, and it has to be a labor of love, and it has to be something you're passionate about. And I just really love this exercise, and I was just compelled to put this thing together. And I agree with you. I think pistols are fun. I think they're interesting. I'm just curious, as a fan of the exercise. I wanted to know everything that I could know, and I wanted to compile it.
Mhm. And this is definitely the manual on pistol squats, folks. It's definitely worth checking out. Once again, the title of that is Perfecting the Pistol Squat, Everything You Ever Want to Know About One-Legged Squat by Al Kavadlo. It's on Amazon right now. There's links down below. Put them in the description there so you can check that out. This book is so worth your time to look at, even if you have been squatting for several years, and even if you can do pistol squats. This is going to take things to a whole nother level, really fill in the gaps that you may be missing in your leg training. And I can't recommend it highly enough, largely because this is the type of training that brings, in my opinion, the most benefit to your health and wellness that you can bring to the table. So when you started writing this book, Al, like, were you endeavoring to write a book on pistol squats or leg training specifically? Like, what was you have an interest in the pistol squat, but you wanted to bring more to the table than just a simple how-to manual of here's some basic progressions and stuff.
You know,
What were some of
once
the other deeper motivations to bringing this book out?
I mean, obviously, people more than ever now are working out at home. Not as many people are going to gyms, and home fitness is something that's more relevant. And you can't, most people can't have a squat rack in their house. You know, you might be able to have a barbell to do some body, upper body stuff with, but it's unlikely that you're going to be doing a serious leg workout at home. And that was certainly part of what inspired me to want to do this. And it was one of those things, the more that I do these various books and projects over the years, I feel like the clearer my focus is going into it, because I've been through it a lot of times. So this book came together relatively quickly once I had the idea, and once I had that initial spark, I just really threw myself into it and just whipped the thing out in less time than I have for some of my other projects. But I think that's just a factor of, one, being a more experienced author at this point, and two, having so much experience with the subject and less having to do research at that point, and more just having to compile all my thoughts and experiences and get them streamlined and on the page.
I also really appreciate this kind of book because I think this is going to be something that we are sorely lacking in fitness media, is a lack of focus. This was a mistake that I made in several of my earlier attempts to write a book. Is like, I'm just gonna word vomit onto the page and put everything I know about all of
Yeah.
exercise and diet and fitness into one book and stuff. And the lessons I've learned over the years is that it's not about getting proficient or knowing a whole bunch of stuff. It's getting really good at a very select number of fundamentals. And over the course of my training career, I've noticed this with anybody in any sport and calisthenics and building muscle and martial arts or whatever, is the people who get the far and away best results, like mind-blowing uh, accomplishments. These are the people who get really, really good at a select handful of fundamental basics. They're not doing anything fancy. They're not doing anything even to a wide variety. They're the people who are just really, really good at very basic things. And that's what this book gives, is you got the basic movement pattern, the squat. It's one of the most fundamental movements we've got as human beings. And this is about how do you get really good at the squatting movement pattern. Because if you could do that, your legs are going to be golden and you won't need 101 different leg exercise variations or workouts that take 3 hours to complete or anything. You'll be in and out and done and on with your life.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you completely, just about narrowing in the focus of your work, because everyone knows there's more content, more media out there than ever, and to just regurgitate the same information again and again is not the best use of anybody's time. So, I think we were talking about this before. I said to myself, what can I do really well? What am I known for? What do people respond to when I post a video of pistol squats? When I do those, people are like, wow, that's what you do really well. And I said, well, this is something I know about. This is something that I can share some information on. And that's what I've done throughout my career. But to your point, this is the most focused book that I've written, in terms of it just essentially being about one exercise, even though obviously it includes lots of other exercises as lead up steps and complements to the pistol squat.
I think what we need these days is more depth in our information. Like, you scroll through social media and stuff, and you've got sayings and you've got memes and you got stuff. And this is information that's quick and easy to churn out, but it's very shallow. It's very
Yeah.
superficial. You watch someone doing some moves on Instagram calisthenics or even some pistol squats and stuff, and you write like a tip of like keep your eyes looking into the horizon or something, that's good, but it's so superficial. It's not really giving people the meat of what they want. It's like we're getting fed crumbs. And this book is a full course
It's a
meal.
deep dive. It is
Deep,
not a
deep
shallow look.
dive. Yes, exactly. Because that depth is what we're starving for. We've got enough superficial, shallow stuff these days, but deep dive stuff like this book is just what we're all starving for. It's what we actually need. We don't need another book that's going to skip on the basic progressions of calisthenics. We've got a million of those books already.
Yeah.
But you take one thing, that pistol squat, and you go to, challenge your deep depths on how to explore it. That's where the real value is and where we need to go to keep growing.
Well, when I first got the idea to put this together, I looked to see, because I thought someone else must have done a book like this already. I just didn't know about it. And to my surprise, there wasn't. The only other book, I'm sure a lot of your listeners know, Pavel's Naked Warrior, has a lot of information on pistol squats. It's about the pistol and the one arm push up. But I think this book of mine probably has 5 times as many words and exercises in it as Pavel's book. Not to take anything away from it. His simplicity is part of his brilliance. And he's someone who's inspired me over the years. And I feel like I would be doing a disservice if I didn't acknowledge that book was also an inspiration for me wanting to put this together. And since this has come out, and it's only been a couple weeks, a lot of people have been messaging me saying, Al, are you going to do a book like this on one-arm push-ups? And the answer is yes. And I've already started doing it. I have an outline. I've already started putting it together. So in a few months, depending on how long it takes me, certainly before the end of this year, I expect to have that book out also. And that's actually, there's a little more to that book. I'm going to keep the audience in suspense for now. It's not just going to be about one-arm push-ups, although that will be the majority of it.
Excellent. That was going to be my next question, is what's next? Because this sort of thing is, like I said, it feels like this is scratching the itch that we've all had that needs to be addressed in our fitness culture. And there's just not nearly enough of this kind of stuff out there. And the thing I also really like about this is that a focused book like this is so much easier to actually apply. I mean, how many times have people read a book, that's this thick, it's got a million different exercises in it and stuff. I've got books on calisthenics and stuff, and I would go through the whole thing after 6 weeks, and I'd be like, oh gosh, that was wow. And then I'm like, well, what the hell do I do now?
Part of why it's fun for me to put together a project like this also is like, this is a book for people who are into calisthenics. This is not trying to reach a completely mainstream audience. So I have other products out there that are more geared toward the mainstream audience. This is one for the calisthenics people, and it needed to be done, and I'm proud of it. I'm glad it's out there, and I'm glad that you read it and enjoyed it, and that other people are benefiting from it too.
Absolutely. So everybody, once again, just to really hammer this home, go check out the links down below. Perfecting the Pistol Squat, everything you ever wanted to know about one-legged squats by Al Kavadlo. So Al, send us off here with our last big tip. It could be about calisthenics, pistol squats, anything, like one big takeaway that we can take home and apply.
Well, no matter what type of training you're doing, I think one of the best things you can do is try to be as objective about yourself as possible. Now, if this is an exercise that you have worked on and you've put time in and you're not satisfied with where it's gotten you, then I think it's time to take a look and say, what else can I do if I'm really serious about learning this exercise? And if you're really serious, then check out the book. If it's not for you, it's not for you. But if you're someone who the pistol squat has always kind of been bothering you, you haven't quite been able to get the grasp on it that you want, I really think this book can help you.
Excellent. Al, thank you so much, very much for coming on here to the RDP podcast. Thank you so much for writing this book and everything that you've done to contribute to the world of calisthenics and helping everybody get stronger and leading more athletic and powerful lives with your strong example. So everybody check out the links down below, and I will talk to you next time. Till then, this is Matt Schifferly reminding you to be fit and live free.